everyone, Dr. Sherrow here with your presentation on decoding. This week your presentation is going to be much shorter than usual because you have a lot of readings this week. We're going to focus on the definition of decoding, give you some examples of regular words as well as non-words. Additionally, we'll talk about how we might test a student to see if they're proficient in decoding, also what decoding is not, some prerequisites for decoding, and then we'll finish off with why are decoding strategies important and how we might teach decoding, which will lead us directly into next week. As I stated before, our presentation is on decoding. Welcome. First and foremost, there are many definitions of decoding out there. This definition I found is decoding refers to the process of translating a printed word into a sound. Essentially, decoding is just looking at the letters and translating them in your head or out loud and putting them into a word. Sometimes we often call decoding word identification. I wanted you to know that, that way you didn't get confused in case any articles you read refer to it as word identification. Additionally, beyond being able to translate that printed word into a sound or being able to read that word, it also includes recognizing patterns in syllables. We're not going to get into that too much, but when we get into phonics, we will look at the 6 different syllable types. I'd like you to read these 3 words for me here. Dog, table, and jump. Think about those words. Do you think they're words we see often or words we don't see very often? Hopefully you said these are words we see quite often and students would see quite often. These are examples of decoding regular words. Now let's look at these words. Read them to yourself or out loud. Now you might be thinking these words definitely don't look like words you've ever seen before. Well, that's because they're words that don't exist. But they do follow our rules of English, and so students should be able to spell them. And so these are words that are non-words or known as fake words. They're based on pronounceable phonics rules, but they're not real words. A highly similar task, such as reading these words, involves asking students to read words that they have never seen before, such as unfamiliar words, which can also help us see how a student is doing in decoding. Well, leading into that, how can we tell if a student is proficient at decoding? Oftentimes we have 2 common tests. The first one, obviously, is translating our words into sounds or taking letters and putting them into words. Additionally, we can test students on non-words or nonsense words, so words that are not real, they don't exist. And like I said, we could also look at words that are not familiar to a student, but are actually real words. They're in the English language. In one of your readings this week, you'll take a look at some last names and how students will decode those last names in order to be tested and see what their decoding is. Some things you should know about decoding. Decoding is not asking a student to tell you what a word means. Decoding is not looking at meaning at all. It's not looking at comprehension. It's really rather a restricted process. Students have to be able to name or read printed letters into words. Now, the reason why decoding is not telling a student to read a word is because, like those words we had at the beginning that I had you read for me, hopefully you guys could read those very quickly, dog, table, and jump. But I didn't ask you what's a dog, what's a table, and what does jumping look like. Decoding is essentially just asking the student what that word is or reading it for us. It is not asking me to describe what that word might represent. That's definitely a different skill. We have some prerequisites for decoding. First and foremost, we have the alphabetic principle. Children must develop the fundamental insight that letters and sounds work together in systematic ways to form words. This understanding provides the foundation for the development of decoding skills. Next, we have concepts about print. For example, a student should learn that in the English system or language, we read from left to right, while in some other countries, they might read from right to left. So these are just concepts about print. Additionally, they need to have knowledge of letter-sound correspondence. This also relates to phonemic awareness and the phonemes presentation, as well as phonemes in general, which we have addressed prior to now. So why are decoding strategies so important? Well, they're the foundation or structure other reading instruction builds on. Think about a building, and when we build it, if we don't have the correct foundation or structure, we're not going to be able to build it very tall. Let's think about a pyramid. Thinking about a structure, if we have a really good base, we can build a very large pyramid. But if we have a building, most buildings can't be built very, very high, but they could be built quite high. But either way, they're still going to need that foundation. Without that foundation, that pyramid's going to fall down or break, as well as that building. So keep that in mind. Students who are unable to decode, they lack fluency, they have limited vocabulary, and they're unable to comprehend the text. So essentially, if a student cannot decode a word in front of them, they're going to lack reading fluency. They're not going to be able to read quickly and with accuracy. Their vocabulary is going to be limited, and their reading comprehension is going to suffer. Why reading comprehension? Well, because they're going to be so focused on reading that word and trying to decode it that they're not going to be able to think about the meaning or pull what the text is telling them. Additionally, teaching higher level reading strategies to students stuck at the word level of decoding is ineffective and frustrating. Students just get frustrated because in reality, they can't think beyond that because they're just stuck on decoding the word. So, how do we teach decoding? Well, we teach it with explicit, systematic, and multisensory phonics instruction, which produces effective decoding skills. Phonics can be taught both implicitly or explicitly, and this leads directly into what we will be going into in the course in our next few modules. I hope you enjoyed this presentation on decoding. Like I said, it was going to be short. Good luck with your module this week. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.